World Bank report on internal climate migration, September 2021, is a vital message. We need to understand this. If you look at how it will reflect even the positive side as well as the negative side, pessimistic scenario I should say, how it will impact this region itself, we need to understand importance of the climate change. The key recommendation the World Bank has given is vital, and countries like Bangladesh, their growth pole strategy is equally important. Let's talk about the pessimistic scene, because that's what we need to recognize and then start mapping it. With a high level of emissions, unequal development. The combined results of the two Groundswell report show that by 2050, as many as 216 million people could be internal, climate migrants across 6 World Bank regions. According to World Bank, climate change could push more than 200 million people to leave their homes in the next. That's huge, isn't it? 200 million people to leave their homes in the next 3 decades and create migration hotspots unless urgent action is taken to reduce the global emission and bridge the development gap. What else people will do? If they have no choice than to go out of the existing location, they will run away. This represents almost 3% of the region's total projected population. Sub-Saharan Africa could see as many as nearly 86 million internal climate migrants. How many? 86 million in Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. Now it's around almost 4% of the total population. Let's take East Asia and Pacific, nearly 48 million. Again, 200% of the population. South Asia, nearly 41 million. That's around nearly 2%, 1.8% I should say. North Africa, nearly 19 million. That's around 9% of the population. Latin America, Brazil or Peru or Chile or name it. Now you have big issues. Was nearly 17 million, nearly 2.6% of the total population. Eastern Europe, like Romania, Bulgaria, name it, Eastern Europe side, and Central Asia, 5 million people, that is around 2.3% of the total population. So these are the numbers, mind-boggling. Where they will go? They will go to the hot spots. If you look at regions, the scale of internal climate migration will be largest in the poorest and most climate vulnerable regions. An indication that underlying gaps in the ability of the livelihood, social and economic systems to cope with the climate change could undermine the development gains. Whatever the development you make it, it's not economics, it is economics, as I always say. Convergence of ecology and the economics will be the deciding factor. Countries like India, where we have agriculture plays a significant portion of the working force. If it is not measured, tempered temperature, climate will go wild. Monsoons will change their patterns. Then food production, food security will be a major issue. If you look at the big picture of the 6 regions examined in 2 reports, Sub-Saharan Africa is projected to have the largest number of internal climate migrants. The region is highly vulnerable to climate change impacts, especially already fragile dry lands and along exposed coastlines. North Africa, however, is predicted to have the largest proportion of climate migrants, with 19 million people moving, equivalent to nearly 9% of the population. That's huge. Mainly due to increase in water scarcity in northern Tunisia, northern western Algeria, western and southern Morocco, and central Atlas foothills. In South Asia, Bangladesh, again we have to talk about it, is particularly affected in flooding and crop failures, accounting for almost half of the predicted climate migrants. 19.9 million, nearly say 20 million, including increasing number of women moving by 2050 under pessimistic scenario. So, while climate change influence on the migration is not something I'm telling new, it's often part of the combination factors pushing people to move, act as a threat multiplier. People affected by conflicts and inequality are also more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change as they have limited means to adapt. Migration hotspots could appear with the next decade and intensify by 2050. Planning is needed both in areas where people will move and the areas they leave to help those who remain. Among the actions recommended were achieving net zero emission by mid-century to have chance at limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and investing in development that is green, resilient, inclusive in line with the Paris Agreement. In the most climate scenario with a low level of emissions and inclusiveness, sustainable development, the world could see nearly 44 million people being forced to leave their homes. That's also bad, we feel. Now, what we need to do, what the World Bank says, reduce the global emission and making every effort to meet the temperature goals as per the COP21 Paris Agreement. Embedding internal climate migration in far-sighted, green, resilient and inclusive development planning. Preparing for each phase of migration so that the internal climate migration as an adoption to, as a strategy can result in a positive development outcomes. Investing in better understanding of the drivers of internal climate migration to inform well-targeted policies. These are very, very important. Let's talk about Bangladesh itself. What you call growth pole strategy. Internal migration is common in Bangladesh, driven by both economic and environmental factors, and mainly towards urban areas. Major cities such as Dhaka already face challenges in absorbing influx of migrants. Rural-urban migration is increasing the concentration of poor people in urban areas and putting a strain on urban and social services. Now, only change we are witnessing around the world. Now, people are moving back to rural as long as you have technical support. They can do internet, Wi-Fi, mobility, mobile connections. Then they know now they can operate. They don't need to relocate. And even the business travel will be only incidental. It is all only for sightseeing, travel for the sake of entertainment they will go. Otherwise, all the business can be done even if you sit in a village. That's what most of us have to do instead of sitting only in the urban side. Reduce the burden on the major cities. In this context, many people have suggested incentivizing migrants towards secondary cities, tier 2 cities. The idea that is the government could identify climate resilient and migrant friendly cities closer to stressed regions that could act as a new alternative economic hub able to provide key services such as education, housing, healthcare, sanitation, all are vital. Bangladesh's Perspective Plan 21 to 41 lays such a growth. The strategy is to deconcentrate growth in certain urban areas, urban centers, I should say, while promoting others as a technological innovations hubs. Aim to, overall, if you look at that is to Bangladesh, akin to India, Bangladesh, and Silicon Valley in the United States, we can replicate, whether it's Bangladesh or Philippines or India, we can replicate the technology centers, the hub. In particular, you can identify Cox's Bazar and the coastline as having growth potential for technological innovation in the marine industry and aquaculture and wind energy. So with the digital transformation, it can be done. For example, International Center for Climate Action and Development, with the funding support from PROCAS, British Council, is working to promote Mongla. That's another area as a migrant-friendly town with initiatives to provide quality education, healthcare, and housing for migrants. Now, it's whether it could be Gwadar, Anwar, and Fuad. That is one model. Mongla is growing a port town. If you look at port town in the southwest coastal regions and destination for internal migrants. Through urban planning, that integrates climate resilient infrastructure coupled with economic opportunities and public services. The project aims to make Mongla an alternative attractive to Dhaka. That's the possibilities. That's what I see more opportunities. I mean, Doha Bank has got an office for the last 5 years in Bangladesh, that too in Dhaka. We get a lot of positive momentum there in terms of economic growth momentum, and the overall if you look at the macroeconomic fundamentals, they are growing in the right direction. The perspective plan of 2141 also envisage development of rural growth centers through an initiative called My Village, My Town. That's beautiful, isn't it? You have to put a heart into it. My village, my town. This is a concept around the world. Every native driven person should look at it and see how we can add value. It aims to improve infrastructure and amenities in rural areas, thus slow immigration in cities. Government of Bangladesh is doing it. Last year they tried. The initiative includes plans for climate resilient road networks, providing adequate water supply, and developing community spaces and rural infrastructure development to bridge the rural-urban divide. This is vital from an overall economic sustenance. So every country is engaged in bridging the gap and looking at the overall migrant mass migration. It's better we leverage technology and move forward in the right direction.